what the person and the mind and the brain will have you do is figure out the fix, right? Is come up with the right answers and then try and be right, just like everything else, right? And when you're being aware of it, see, here's the thing: whether you realize it or not, it's irrelevant, right? As long as you practice the way it's meant to be done, you're doing the practice. And if you're aware of it, when you're aware of it without your necessarily understanding what's happening, is you're being the awareness when you're aware of it, right? And so eventually, as you continue to practice over time, as you're practicing being aware of it, as you're practicing being, over time, that which isn't real will start to show up more and more as not real. So that as time passes, the real problem will get solved. And the real problem is the idea you have of yourself. You see, when you were talking there, right? When you were saying I, right? That'll dissolve. And when that dissolves, the problem's over. Because now there's nobody for any of this to happen to, right? Now all there is the experience. And to simply continue. See, the thing is this, the understanding that makes available on a very deep, direct level is the knowledge of self. The understanding that is made available through this practice more and more, not like a belief or something you learn, but something that's directly present for you, is the knowledge of self. So that's good. That keeps deepening and that keeps flashing for you, and you have a conviction about the truth of who you are and about the way it is and so forth. But the programming still runs anyway. And the programming has succeeded in capturing your attention for so long, and it's so perfectly designed to do that, that you have to keep falling down and getting up again. You have to keep losing it and remembering it. You have to keep following the thoughts, identifying with them. You have to keep following the emotions, identifying with them, And the way this works, if you practice consistently, is over time, there's more awareness available as these programs are running, more and more awareness available, so that the programming is not running on totally automatic anymore. There's more and more awareness available. So yeah, what Brian just described is a good thing, because for him to say what he's saying, in order for you to think about thinking, you have to be aware. So that's an in the process reality. That's an in the process reality. And you have to give yourself credit, because I really mean this. I hope you guys can get this. You really have to give yourself credit, because the overwhelming majority of humanity does not have that awareness. The overwhelming majority. If I said to my mother, "Do you ever think about thinking?" she would look at me like, "See how you are?" She did. That's what she used to say to me. Why do you think about these things? What's wrong with you? That's how it lands for somebody if you say something like that to somebody who never imagined the possibility of thinking about thinking. They don't even know what the hell that means. What are you talking about? Thinking about thinking. But see, you're an initiate. One of the things about this person that I've been reading recently, this Durkheim, is he talks about initiation. He talks about initiation, and he says initiation is a very powerful and important process where you're initiated into this way of transformation. You're initiated, you become a practitioner, you become an initiate of the truth, you become initiated into the reality of the truth. And it's out of that initiation that you continue to expand, and you continue to learn, and you continue to practice. But the initiation is an interesting process, because you're being initiated out of being crazy. You're being initiated out of the insanity that comes about when the only thing that's going on for you in your life and in your world is to survive. The definition of insanity could be, well, you know the old one, to keep doing the same thing no matter whether it works or not, right? That's certainly a good definition of insanity, right? But it's insane to not stop and pay attention to what's going on when it's possible to do that. So the initiation is initiation out of the psychological self. This is the initiation. So if I'm working with somebody in psychotherapy, in the beginning, I'm talking to the psychological self, right? I'm talking to who they think they are, and they're going to present me things from that point of view, and they want me to assist them in being an improved version of a person. That's what they came for. Because they have no idea that there's anything else possible, right? So gradually over time, you know, there's this process of kind of like starting to throw in a few hints about what's possible, so that the person starts to entertain and consider the possibility that there's another experience of life available other than the psychological self. That the psychological self is this limited, conditioned reality that you're living inside of, that manifests itself as the thoughts that happen in your mind and the patterns that play. And so if you begin to move out of that and move into the reality of the truth of what you are and the reality of the way things are, you're kind of being initiated out of the psychological self into the reality of who you are, into the true self. And once that initiation process happens, then you can be counted on. That's what I meant. That's what I was talking about when I said, I don't want you to be here as a student anymore. I don't want you to come here to a class anymore. I want you to now be here as a trainee. You're being trained now. And the expectations are different. I'm not interested in entertaining you. I'm not interested in how you feel. I'm not interested in what you like. I'm not interested in what you don't like or what you want. And you ought not to be interested in that stuff either, because it doesn't get you anywhere. What you want to be interested in and what you're initiated into is reality. You want to be interested in reality. You want to be interested in what works, not how you feel. And when you start to see this more and more clearly, you know, I was talking to Jerry about it before you all came in. We're talking about being on time, right? What's it take to be on time? That's not rocket science, is it? You know what I mean? If I said to you guys, look, the next class is going to be Sunday at 8:30, and if you're here by 8:30, you will get a crisp, brand new $100 bill. That would modify your behavior, wouldn't it? Why is it that would modify your behavior, but being on time in and of itself for its own value doesn't have much interest? Oh, you know, we'll see. It's funny, you know, when you start to really get clear about how reality works, it's a black and white situation. There's no bullshit in the game. That's why, you know, I often go back to talking about professional sports players and how they pay people good money to keep them straight, because they have a mind and they know, if I don't have somebody that I'm paying to keep me straight and it's left up to me and my mind, then good luck with that. They know that. They've seen it not work consistently, so they accept the idea that that's how it has to be. And then if they're successful, they get into this state of being when they're playing the game where they produce these extraordinary results. And unfortunately, it's left on the field. It's an amazing reality that people that can perform at that level and understand the consciousness necessary to do that. And this just shows you how insidious the mind is. Even in spite of the fact that that's the case, they don't get the idea that you could do that everywhere in your life. So you end up being great at football or great at golf or great at tennis, and in your personal life you suck. You can't get along with people because you don't understand. It's the same thing. There's no difference. So there is a reality, and it's readily available at all times, but it can't be seen. The reality of who you are, for example, is readily available at all times, right? It's readily available at all times. You're always you, right? That's real. You're always you, and that's real. But what are the agreements about that, right? The agreement that is running humanity is still that who you are is the personality. So when we're practicing meditation, we're practicing sitting still, being open, being receptive, being present, so that we can begin to see the difference between what's real and what's coming and going, right? What's real is not coming and going. It's not changing. It's stable. If you're sitting there and you have an itch on your body, right? What happens if you don't itch it? Yeah, it passes, right? So in meditation, right? So that's not to say that, okay, so when you're not meditating and you have an itch, don't itch it. You should never itch your body anymore. Enlightened people don't scratch their body. Enlightened people don't itch. They don't scratch their itches. So if you want to be enlightened and you have an itch, don't scratch it. No, that's not the case. When you're not practicing meditation, scratch the itch. The reason we're practicing meditation is so you can experience that the itch will come and go without doing anything. Just like everything else will come and go without doing anything. So that might mean that when you're having a strong emotion, that instead of letting the automatic process run, where you're going to run or fight or freeze, right? Instead of doing any of that, you're just being there with it and experiencing it passing. That's why you don't itch the itch. So you can experience that it passes. You don't have to do anything. Just like everything else. Everything passes. You don't have to do anything. The beauty of awareness is it lets itself go totally into what's happening. It's not removed, it's not separate, it is everything. It is life itself. It lets itself go totally into what's happening without any protection at all, because it doesn't need protection. Like Krishnamurti said, when somebody asked him to describe what it's like to be enlightened, he said, well, I don't mind anymore. I still care, but I don't mind. I can allow everything to be as it is. That doesn't mean I don't care. But the reason I'm allowing everything to be the way it is because it is that way. It's you know what I mean? That's not some kind of relinquishing anything. It's just accepting that it is that way. I can still care about it, but it is the way it is. I have to be related to the way it actually is. So this whole thing about, you have to understand that the Bob that you have been being is the limited idea that you have of yourself that still plays itself out in your mind and your brain. That's what the Bob is, right? But once you see who you are, and you can see Bob, there comes a time when you can see Bob. There comes a time when you can see the person, and you can see how that person is being right now, what they're thinking, what their preferences are, what they're doing, what they're avoiding, and everything, right? So you can see that, right? But you're not being that now. You're seeing it. And because you're seeing it, it over time gradually will begin to realign itself to who you're being now, because now who you are exists where it didn't exist before. You see, when you thought you were Bob, that was it. But now when you know the truth of yourself, something exists that didn't exist before. And what existed didn't exist before can now be aware of what used to be the case in terms of what you considered to be real and true about who you were. But you're not that now. You're not that anymore. And now you're in a relationship with that. And over time, through practicing meditation, the brain will gradually realign itself and reorganize itself to be consistent with the truth now that the truth has appeared, now that the truth is there. So there are two things, right? One is the realization, right? Which is, you've all heard about it, right? The realization that with Eckhart Tolle, all these people have the realization, right? Where they tell you when they became enlightened, so forth. So you have the realization. That's the recognition of who you are, right? And then the second thing is the necessary practice, right? To deconstruct and reorganize the reality that you have been experiencing and the reality of who you are. The practice has to be there to gradually reorganize things. If that wasn't the case, and you just had this shocking thing where you woke up and you knew who you were, and you weren't a person anymore, and you weren't a personality anymore, you would fall apart. Every once in a while that happens. There are people that have these instantaneous awakenings, right? And they're like a vegetable. They don't know what to do anymore. They don't know how to be. They don't know what to do. So you need the gradual introduction, to being a different way in the world. You need it to take place gradually. If you look at somebody like Eckhart Tolle, I think after he had this awakening experience, I think it was several months that he was walking around in a daze. Like he didn't know what the hell happened. So it's not a highly recommended way to do it. Although people do want that because people still maintain the belief that if I can have that experience, then I'll be where he is, I'll be free, I won't have problems anymore, I won't have a mind anymore, I won't have a past anymore, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And unfortunately, it's too often the case that a lot of these people go along with that because that keeps the money coming, right? When in reality, the truth is, there's probably a lot of people who are considered to be awakened people who are probably psychologically more screwed up than people who have no idea who they really are. That's an interesting consideration, right? All right, so we will meet again on Sunday at 8:30, and if you're not here, you are not enlightened. And if you're late, you're really being a pain in my ass.
Do we get $100?
No, you give me $100.